Hello and welcome to Worst Quality Crab, a podcast of Asian American stories and recipes from best quality hearts. I'm your host, Freesia Lee. Joining me as always is my producer and husband, Sam.
Hello.
And on this episode, we are joined by guest Alisa Wong. Alisa is an ABC San Franciscan that loves connecting over fandoms and pop culture through style. She has very good style, I can attest to this. And bonus points if she can connect some sort of like culture identity reflection in her commentary through all of that. Alisa, hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, glad to be here. So excited to talk with you both today.
So happy to have you. We talk a lot, but not in this context. So this is very exciting for me. Also, I think I've been trying to get you on this show for like maybe 8 months. I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's been a good number of months now. And I've only just recently finally thought of a recipe to bring to you all.
I'm going to challenge that, but that's fine. Just for our listeners out there, Alisa, please explain ABC.
ABC is American-born Chinese. So I was born here, but I am ethnically Chinese.
I just like that you say ABC San Franciscan because I feel like for a handful of people that are listening and that I know, like we know what that means innately, sort of. And like the things that we're going to talk about are just like so ingrained in me. So it'll be interesting to see like what we talk about and also Sam's like New York take on all of this because yes, ABC is universal to like everyone born here, but I feel like ABC San Franciscan for me is like a special intersection.
Yeah, I think part of that too is I actually was going back and forth between if I wanted to call myself third generation. And I think part of that is because I know there's also debate over what third or even second generation means, I think, between West Coast and East Coast. I think there's like different definitions for both, apparently, depending on what coast you're from. So that's also why I kind of wanted to work San Franciscan in there, because I think there is, to your point, something that's a little bit different of being an ABC in San Francisco or West Coast versus, East Coast or a different city.
I especially love it in the context of your dish. So what special dish are you bringing to us today? Who is making this? Where are you eating it? Tell me all of the things. And then I have questions and many comments, and I already know where I'm taking this tangentially, and I'm very hungry thinking about it.
And then if I forget any of these answers, go ahead and remind me. But today I am bringing tomato beef. It's something that my dad used to make for us a lot as kids, and we would eat it over rice, which I think is also something, Freesia, that you and I have talked about before, where some people eat it over noodles, but for our family, we always ate it over rice. And I admit it's actually been a while since I've had tomato beef, but I think for me, I love how like saucy it is. I'm a sauce person. I think my family in general is also like a sauce family. And I think that's also why we liked eating it over rice, because rice just pairs perfectly with anything saucy.
I love this. Sam, you are nodding. This is like a thing that you ate also.
Did your father like mix some egg into it too, or no? Or is it just tomato and beef?
Yeah, most of the time it was just tomato and beef. I think once in a while he did mix egg in, but I think most of the time it was just tomato beef straight up.
Cool. My mom made a version that was like tomato, minced beef, and then some egg, and then maybe some onions in there too, garlic.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Very saucy.
Okay, wait. Sam, your mom's is more like a ground beef, right?
Yeah.
Alisa, was yours more a ground beef or like a sliced beef?
Yeah, mine was more of a sliced beef, which again, I think is maybe a point of difference for East and West Coast. But we always kind of joked also that that's the reason it was such a favorite dish, mostly of my brother's, because he loved eating like beef, like sliced beef. So whenever my dad made it, it was always a fun night in the house.
Yeah. See, so this is like, Sam, I think when I was first telling you about Alisa coming on and the dish, and I was like, oh, she's going to talk about tomato beef. And we'll come back to this. But like, for me, it conjures up tomato beef chow mein and how that to me is like very classic San Francisco. But then you were like, oh, well, I ate tomato beef, but like over rice. In my head, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I think what was happening for me was like, I know that you have like a ground beef version and like a tomato egg version. And I assumed that Alisa's was the sliced beef tomato version that like more easily translates to the tomato beef chow mein. So now that's all to say I was correct, not whatever. But like there are differences.
I kind of wish what I had done prior to coming on the show is I kind of wish I did a little bit of research on like the history of each, because I'm sure there's some kind of like historical context of why there's like people that are using minced beef and there's people that are using sliced beef. I'm sure there's some kind of like historical, cultural transfer of ideas kind of route happening in there.
Now I'm wondering if my mom ever used sliced beef, because she definitely made some sliced beef dishes like in a stir fry, and it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for her to like mix that together.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what cut of beef was used? Is it like a flank steak or something?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure what specific cut of or kind of beef that he was using. I actually don't think I know off the top of my head, but that's a good question.
While you were talking, I did a quick tomato beef chow mein history. What I gathered on the quick Google thing was like it was a big dish in Chinatown in the 60s and 70s, which makes sense. That tracks. I mean, I think what's interesting about it for me is like that feels like a quintessential San Francisco Chinatown or like San Francisco Chinese dish. And to the point where like, Sam, you had never had it until you moved here, right? Like tomato beef chow mein.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah.
Didn't know it was a thing.
Oh, interesting.
You were like, what was I talking about? Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Alisa, did you grow up with both the like at-home tomato beef over rice and tomato beef chow mein as a kid?
Yeah, so at home we would eat it over rice, but then if we went out to dinner, sometimes we would, if we ordered it, then it would be over noodles.
Was your dad's home version as like ketchupy or like sweet as a restaurant one?
No, so that's also an interesting thing to think about, because I think for our family, we actually didn't like it when it was as sweet. Like same thing with like ABC spaghetti, you know, where it's like they're using a lot of ketchup in that spaghetti sauce. So it's real sweet. It's almost like a dessert. Our family doesn't like it that sweet. So I think he used less ketchup when we were at home making it. And then, when we went out to restaurants, it tasted a lot sweeter, which we still liked it and ate it, but we definitely preferred it at home when it was less sweet.
Oh, interesting.
Why, are you a sweet side person?
I mean, I'm basically a sugar addict. That has been proven time and time again on the show. So like for me, I was like, this is a lunch food and a dinner food and a sweet food all at once and a meat food. Great. Like hit all the food groups, big carbs, some meat, little sugars, you know.
Tomato counts as
tomato
a vegetable,
counts as vegetable,
even though it's not. Yeah,
exactly. It's perfect. Yeah. It was also one of the first things that I feel like I started ordering on my own when I started eating meat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think because like, we would go to like lunch at Chinese restaurants and, it would be like a lunch special. And I just was kind of overwhelmed with like a menu. And like I knew that it was something that I liked. And so it was like a go-to where I could just be like, oh, tomato beef chow mein, like no question. I like it. I know what it's called. Sometimes I would order in Chinese and that was fine. So it was like a comforting go-to in that like transition, I guess. It was a little bit later, like after I'd been eating meat for like a few years, but it was still like one of the things where I was like, I can count on this.
Interesting. I also want to rewind because I didn't realize you didn't eat meat for a part of your life then?
Yes, girl, go back and listen. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding.
I've listened to a few. I will say I know.
That's fine. Yeah, so I didn't eat meat until I was 9, and I was vegan until I was 8.
Oh, okay. Was that your own choice or something that like your parents
forced you? What 8-year-old makes choices like that? That's wild. No, it was a parental decision. And then when I started to travel with my grandparents, they were like, I first went to Japan and Hong Kong with my grandfather when I was 8, and we went to like Tokyo Disney when it was brand new. But he was like, I cannot travel with this child if she cannot at least eat dairy.
Yeah.
So that was my first foray into dairy, and it was largely eating McDonald's pancakes. Because there's McDonald's everywhere, and it's especially fun in Asia from what I remember. And then when I was 9, they wanted to take me to Europe, and they were like, okay, also, how about meat? Because it's Europe, which is fair. So that's how I started eating meat. And then eventually that led to me ordering tomato beef chow mein as my go-to dish.
Nice. I did ask about, whether it was your choice or your family, because my cousin, I think, granted, her mom was a vegetarian for like the longest time. So she kind of, I think, just naturally picked that up from her mom. But I remember we were also, I think, I don't know, 8 or 9, maybe even 7. And we went to like some state fair. And I remember she was like petting a goat or something. And she decided on the spot to be vegetarian, like on the spot, even though she was mostly vegetarian already. I just remember she very consciously was like, I am now vegetarian. I cannot eat animals. And ever since then, she's been vegetarian.
Oh, so, wow. That's really adorable.
So that's why I ask sometimes.
Not to be whatever. No. That's a good question. And not to be whatever, but this is the second thing today where I have seen an example of someone just being like, in the moment I decided and I have never gone back. And now I'm wondering, should I? I don't know. Whatever.
Life choices.
Well, I used to also do a thing where like for 1 month out of the year, I would be vegan. And it was largely to offset my carbon footprint for like all of my shitty consumer habits. So I could feel, better about like buying too many t-shirts or whatever. But also sometimes when I would do that and I was working out or like running, like I felt great. So I don't know, maybe, oh God, is this just the universe pointing me back towards being sometimes vegan? Oh shit. I didn't expect this for this episode. Thank you.
But it's also funny you say that too, because earlier this year, it was on Netflix. It was like a twin study, and they studied like sets of twins, identical twins. One person was an omnivore, one person was on a vegan diet. And just to see like the health benefits from, I mean, both had health benefits, but obviously the vegan eaters were a lot better off in the long run. And again, just like carbon footprint, thinking of all of that, I was kind of like, okay, maybe I need to eat less meat now.
Oh no.
I admit I tried, for like the first few months earlier this year, I definitely was eating less meat, and I'm eating more meat nowadays because it's hard to maintain. But at the same time, I'm at least trying to be a little bit more conscious of how often I'm eating meat. But all of that to say, I've also had thoughts this year of like, do I need to completely change my eating habits and lifestyle? Also, mostly because on both sides of my family, we tend to have like high cholesterol in general. So that's something that I'm also consciously thinking about of like, okay, I have a history of these health problems. What can I do on my end to just curb that to the best of my ability? Don't know if it's actually helping yet because I haven't gotten a blood test done in a while, but hopefully eventually it will.
Yeah, sure. But you also have like a 90-something-year-old grandmother who's doing okay, right? I mean, you have longevity in your family as well.
Yeah, I actually, both my grandmas on both my sides are 93, 94. Yeah, so
wow,
that is good news for me, at least. But lucky that they're still around. And one of them who was, like I told you, we recently went on a family cruise with her, and she's still out there making business deals. Like she's still in business at 94.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Were either of them ever cooking for you?
So interestingly enough, going back to like my dad being the one cooking for us, I think he was the one that knew how to cook actually better than my mom. Because my mom's mom, the grandma on my mom's side, she cooked all the time. So therefore, my mom never felt like she really had to learn how to cook or pick any of that up.
Oh, interesting.
But my dad's mom, she was constantly working. So the kids had to cook for themselves. And I think that's how my dad learned how to cook. So she was telling us, my grandma on my dad's side, she was the one that we recently went on vacation with. She was telling us, I had to watch the grocery store. They had a small family grocery store. She said, I had to watch the grocery store. And then in the evenings, I studied to learn how to be a real estate agent. So I would stay up until like midnight, 2 a.m. or whatever, studying to try to take this test.
Wow.
So I think because of that, she didn't have a lot of time to actually cook like she would obviously provide them food and whatnot. But I think, for my dad and his siblings, if they wanted something that was a little nicer home cooked meal, they would have to do it on their own. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting thing to think about that. Like, my mom was not the best. Like, we used to poke fun at my mom a lot about the meals that she would make us, like, spaghetti with like salmon in it or something, or like spaghetti with broccoli in it. And we were in high school at that age, and we're kind of like, okay, if we were kids, sure, but we're in high school now. This isn't the best meal for dinner. Like, yeah. She did a lot of like, I think it was like barbecue ribs, like that you buy from Safeway. She would just like pop it in the oven or pop it into like the microwave. Nice. Yeah, which we did love those, but at the same time,
I was gonna say, I feel like I went through a phase of that in like middle school maybe or high school, where my mom was doing that a lot, and I was like, I got no problems with this.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we loved that. But at the same time, I think it just speaks to like my mom just needed something easy. She didn't cook a lot growing up. So, and nowadays, like cooking for myself, I'm like, just give me something that's easy.
Do you think your dad enjoyed cooking?
Yeah, he very much enjoyed cooking. So whenever we had tomato beef for dinner, it was a very special treat for us because he would work a lot when we were kids, and sometimes he would come home too late to actually make dinner. So whenever he was able to come back a little earlier and make us dinner, it was always a special treat because he didn't get to do that often. And he also made pancakes for us on the weekends sometimes. So that was also a really special treat for us. I don't know if it's still up, but I remember for a long while we did have this like sketch of, I think, a chef Mickey like making pancakes, and it was like hanging in our kitchen. And it was because like me and my brother and sister, we loved weekend mornings when my dad was able to make us pancakes.
That's adorable. Also, I'm understanding a little bit more about you and your Disney fandom. Sounds like this goes back a while.
Yes, it does. Well, on top of that too, like my parents, I think both are also Disney fans to some extent too. So we very much, I think, inherited it from them a little bit.
It's genetic.
Yeah. Disney has been a part of my life for a very long time.
Okay.
Yeah. I think when I was 6 months old, my parents ended up taking me to Paris with my grandparents. And of course, they ended up stopping at Disneyland Paris. So like, I think the first time I was in a Disney park was when I was 6 months old.
Wow. Oh my God. This explains so much.
Yeah. And I don't know the whole backstory to this, but I think what happened was they already had this whole Paris trip booked. And they were kind of like, well, the baby will be born by then. We'll just take her along with us. Like, we don't want to like cancel and rebook everything.
I mean, mathematically, I have questions. Like, how far in advance are they booking this trip? Like 15 months, maybe more. Anyway, that's fine. Good for them. Good for them. I mean, we could barely travel to New York with a 8-month-old. So kudos to your parents. I'm very impressed. Also, did your dad make Mickey pancakes when you were a kid?
Yes, we had the OG Mickey waffle maker, actually. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you remember which one, but these days when they sell the Mickey waffle makers, I think it's actually inverted. Like the crevices are actually opposite than what they used to be. So a joke that me and some of my other friends we talk about is like, oh yeah, we had the OG Mickey waffle maker because it was the opposite, like the crevices were the opposite way, like where the grooves were to pour syrup and all that good stuff.
Could you take an old one and a new one and make them and then put them together to form like interlocking waffle sandwich?
Actually, maybe I should try that. I should try that. Because I actually don't know if my parents still have the OG ones buried somewhere in the house. Like, I wonder if they still have it, but I definitely need to try that because I know my friends have the OG one still, so I should ask them for theirs and then use a new one, see if it matches up.
That's amazing. Please do that. Please let us know.
Yeah, I'll
Post
keep you informed.
Somewhere. Yeah, I have to know because that is the only thing I can think of now at this point.
Yeah,
I just want to see these interlocking groove. But also, I feel like the first time that I saw Mickey pancakes, I was like, oh my God, genius. You're making a shape of these pancakes. It's 3 circles. It's 3 circles. It's like the perfect pancake thing. But now, there's whole full on fucking pancake art and like make a Spider-Man out of pancake mix. All that to say, I guess kudos to Disney.
I mean, I don't know how people do all that pancake art. I do not have the patience for it because what I've heard is to be successful at pancake art is you need to put the heat on super, super low so the pancake doesn't cook through. And I do not have the patience for that.
No, I think also like I haven't seen a lot of it, but I almost feel like the pancakes are not edible.
Yeah. They're probably not the greatest tasting pancakes. I know they're probably using a lot of food coloring. Maybe there's something in there to make them a little bit not as goopy or whatever. Like they're
like they
gummier.
don't cook as fast because they have something in them that just like makes for terrible pancakes. Going back to tomato beef, you have a brother and a sister. Was this also a favorite for them?
Yeah, I think it was a house favorite because I love saucy things. My sister is not a picky eater. She's more of a foodie than we are, so she very much loved it. And then for my brother specifically, he hated eating vegetables. So this was kind of like, again, our way to get him to eat quote unquote vegetables. Granted, tomato is not a vegetable, but
it has a vitamin.
Yeah, exactly. It's better than just eating straight up beef. So it was a favorite of all three of ours, which I think is also why it was kind of like a nice, it was always a nice evening when we were able to eat tomato beef because we all enjoyed it and we wouldn't have to like sit there and watch someone else kind of like squirm around and be like, I don't want to eat this. And then they'd get upset, start crying, like, how kids are. Like,
oh God, is that what we're in for? Is that our future?
Yes. A little. If you got picky eaters, yeah, I think so. I don't know if you've ever mentioned if any of them are picky eaters or not.
A little bit. I mean, there are definitely occasions where they do not agree on one thing to eat. And so, it's either have one of them be very unhappy or, just give in and make multiple dishes or dinners.
The other thing that we're not trying, that maybe we should be, is just making the thing that we want to eat and having them all be unhappy. And they could learn to deal with it. Just a thought. I mean, I feel like right now that is too much of a battle emotionally, mentally for us. And so we will make like, two very easy things, or one is unhappy and the unhappy one will be like, okay, well, do you want this leftover something else? But yeah, I think for now we're doing okay on the like, all right, I'll concede. It's fine. Nobody's like super squirmy and like watching the other, like no one's just being like, nom, 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 gobbling it up. And the other's just like on the floor kicking, except for the baby. But that's because she's a baby.
Yeah, pass for baby. Pass for anyone under 24 months.
She just will put food she likes into her mouth and then let it fall out anyway for no reason. Do either of your siblings take after your dad in the kitchen? You sound more like your mom.
Yes. I'm very much more like my mom. My sister is very much more like my dad. Like she is the cook of the family. She loves making things. She's in her sourdough bread era. She's yeah, she loves doing like the cooking classes. Like if we're traveling somewhere, she recently went to France, so she like took a croissant making class. Like she is that person. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're patiently waiting for her tester chocolate croissants to come through.
Nice.
How do we get on that list?
I know, yeah, we're patiently waiting. She is actually trying to have like, I think a garage sale this upcoming Sunday, and she is planning on selling some of her sourdough breads. I don't know how many, but she wants to sell some of her sourdough breads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me where. Tell me when.
Yep.
I want to pivot because we touched a little bit on your Disney fandom. And in your questionnaire getting ready for this show, you made a comment about the Ant-Man ride. And I just thought it was so good. And so please just, I'm not even going to set you up. You just say the thing and then we'll go from there because it's chef's kiss. Just really.
Yeah, no, it's funny because when we went recently, I didn't realize that it used to be the old Buzz Lightyear ride, but I didn't realize they recently revamped it to be Ant-Man, which for listeners that don't know, Ant-Man is based in San Francisco. So what I thought was really cool was in the ride queue, they show this area where it's like a police station, people are reporting crimes, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Ant-Man's supposed to go there and save the day. But on one of the police station desks, instead of donuts, there's an egg tart there. It's a Don Tot egg tart just like sitting there, and it's got a huge bite taken out of it. And I was like, I love this so much because I feel like it's just so representative of one, San Francisco, but two, again, being like ABC in San Francisco. It just feels like such a perfect setup of, or even just like a section of the ride that's like, oh yeah, ABC San Franciscans exist. Here you go. Like, we know this and you can see yourself here. And then in addition to that, at the end of the ride, they also have Ant-Man and Wasp kind of saying goodbye to everyone. And they're like, yeah, job well done, everyone. Who wants an egg tart? And again, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This ride sees me. And then the other layer to that too is the fact that you're getting this at an international park. You're not getting it, in the US. It's in Hong Kong, which again, I think for a lot of Chinese Americans in San Francisco are kind of from either Hong Kong or a southern China area. So, I mean, it makes sense that the Hong Kong Disneyland has that, but it was also kind of this other layer of like, wow, I finally feel seen, but it's not even in the US. It's like outside the US. So I thought that was also kind of just an interesting thing to think about too. But it is now one of my top ride choices, I think, because of those little winks. I always appreciate a little wink.
I love that. I want to eat a Don Tot. The kids and I were talking about egg tarts this morning. Everything is just coming back at me from this morning. I don't know what to make of this. The universe is sending me food signs, I think.
I think the other reason it was top of mind for me was because I also had some Don Tots this weekend because I saw my grandma and she was also craving Don Tots. So the whole family had Don Tots this weekend.
Did you go to Golden Gate Bakery though?
I don't think it was Golden Gate though.
I mean, that would have been like a huge get.
I know, exactly.
Listeners, the deal on Golden Gate Bakery is that it looks closed all of the time, but it's not. And sometimes it's open, but who knows when. And if it is, there's basically a line for these egg tarts. And good luck getting some, even if you're there for an hour. Who knows? It's like the most exclusive club possible to get into, weirdly. I don't know that I've actually had one or not in like 25 years.
It might have been a few years for me also.
We're kind of just getting them in our neighborhood and not going to Chinatown that much.
Yeah. I don't find myself in Chinatown too often these days. Granted, my grandma does live up the block. For some reason, we never actually make it down to like Golden Gate itself. Like if we're there, there's already like a restaurant picked out or something, usually by my grandma. And we're like going there strictly for lunch. And then we're coming back to drop her off because she's feeling tired, which at 93, 94.
Allowed.
And walking up a hill, allowed. Yes.
You have both like a number of siblings and a number of cousins. And I feel like a lot of the guests that we've had is like just either a lot of siblings or a lot of cousins. And you were kind of the blend of both, which I think is an interesting family dynamic as well, especially around food.
Yeah, no, interesting. I think when we go to visit my grandma in Chinatown, it's sometimes a mix. Sometimes it's just my immediate family, like so our siblings and my parents. And sometimes it is a bigger family affair that includes my cousins. I have 3 cousins on that side, and they also now each have their own kids. So more recently, it's even been like a bigger family get together because they all have kids. Whereas a little less than 10 years ago, it was a few less heads because they didn't have kids yet. But yeah, now it's, I think, inching towards 20 with all the kids involved. It's usually dependent on whatever the celebration is. So for like Lunar New Year, it'll be everyone, every single person. But for maybe like smaller birthdays or something like that, it would be maybe just my immediate family.
A very specific logistical question. Are you doing 2 tables?
Yeah. When it's 20-ish of us, yes, 2, sometimes 3 tables. If we're 2, then we're still squeezing. Even then, there's maybe a couple kids that are on laps because they're small enough still. And then, yeah, we don't have to get the 3rd table.
Yeah.
Yes. for sure. And then if we can manage, like if we can plan far enough in advance, and depending on the restaurant, we'll try to get like the quote unquote private room so the kids can run around. Yeah. And they can be noisy without people looking at us.
Yeah. I think this is the problem that we're running into of like, we're maxing out of table size. If we invite any additional aunts, uncles, whatever, or when Sam's family is visiting, then we're kind of like a minimum 2 tables. And then we don't know how to split them, I think is also the thing.
Yeah.
Or it just ends up being like a lot of adults and then like Sam and I with our 3 kids and then my parents. And we're like, what's the point of this?
Yep. No, that's also something that our families run into is like, how are the tables being split? Do we want to do a quote unquote kids table, like younger generation table, and then older generation table? Do we want to split by family? Like these 2 families on this side, those 2 families on that side? Or do we want to split it by like, oh, well, this family has the younger kids, so they're going to need older adults to help them out. So it's very much a mixed bag every time we all go out for dinner. And we'll just rotate.
I think I still feel like a kid where like I don't want to sit with the adults. I don't want to sit with the old people.
Same.
Well, I'm not of that generation yet. Don't clump me with that generation. Which I think actually is something we ran into when we went on vacation with my dad's mom, my grandma on that side recently, because our oldest cousin on that side, she does get clumped, I think, into the older generation once in a while, even though she's technically my generation. But because she's the oldest of the cousins, and we have so many cousins now on that side of the family, she just gets bumped because of the number of seats. And I know for her, she like hates being bumped because she wants to be, she wants to be with the appropriate generation, which I completely understand. So I think for her, she definitely runs into that problem a lot. We try our best to make sure it's mixed up so that, grandma gets FaceTime with everyone, and then all the cousins get FaceTime with each other. Then aunts and uncles still feel like they're kind of involved with cousins' lives. So we'll try to mix it up as best we can, which I think we actually did pretty well on this last vacation that we all went on together.
I was thinking back to like, being ABC San Franciscan. I think that is a very specific thing. And I'm curious, like, what your take on it is.
I don't know. I feel like there's a couple different things that are popping up. I mean, you're completely right. There is something that I just like feel innately, but it's just so hard to describe. And I think for other friends that I've talked with who, also consider themselves like ABC San Franciscans, I think they feel it too. But like, if I have to like try to think of how to pinpoint in this moment, I'm like, I don't know how to pinpoint it. Maybe the way around helping us try to like put a frame around it is, I don't know, for like Sam, do you feel like growing up on the East Coast as like Asian American or Chinese American, like, do you feel like that was a very like unique, specific kind of experience growing up over there?
I think it was unique, but I don't know like what we're comparing it to necessarily.
Yeah.
Vibes. We're comparing it to vibes. No. I think there's something about being second or third or fourth, fifth generation that feels different here, that exists here for lots of reasons that have to do with immigration and the railroads and like all kinds of historical shit that makes it feel Warrior, the HBO show, shout out HBO, Max, whatever. That makes it feel different here than elsewhere. Right, Sam, I think that like when we're visiting, and like, yes, New York Chinatown is old and historic in many generations, but when we're there, whether it's Canal or in Brooklyn or in Queens, it feels fresher, like more immigrants, a little less specific in a way. And I feel like here, it's hard to describe, but like when I hear your parents speak Chinese, it doesn't sound familiar to me that much. But when I hear older Chinese people speak Chinese here, it feels very familiar in this way of like, oh, I know that they grew up here and like they are sort of like first generation born here, but there's just this way that they speak Chinese that is still very correct, but sounds very much here. And if I hear them elsewhere in another city, it's familiar. Like I understand the language better when they're speaking Cantonese here. And it's like that specific type of person in that generation than when it's your parents or anyone else in New York. Like, it just feels different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually really is, for me, especially, half Chinese living here, is a weird sort of like, I don't know how to relate here, and I don't know how to relate when I go outside because the Chinese here is so specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question to you, Alisa, is like, when you are not in San Francisco and you're traveling, like, does your connection to your Chineseness or your ABC-ness like shift at all? And what's that like?
Yeah. And I think it also, for me, it depends on where I'm traveling to, like, especially like going to Asia and stuff like that. It's a little bit of a feeling of like, oh, I'm not Asian enough to be here, yet I know I look Asian. Like, obviously being back here, I very much navigate the world and perceived as, being very Asian. But when I'm over there, it's apparent to me that I'm not as quote unquote Asian as everyone else here. Like, because I don't speak the language. Growing up, I was maybe taught like little baby words, but these days, like, I don't really know any Cantonese. I maybe know a few food words here and there, but that's about it. I think that's also another a big part, at least for me, where I'm just like, I probably could learn a little bit more of the language. But yeah, I think depending on where I'm traveling to, so like, I don't know, Europe or something, yes, I feel very much like, okay, I am very much an Asian in this space. And that's how people are also very much perceiving me. I will say I did have this was a while ago now, maybe 2016 or something like that. I remember I did have this altercation when I was at Shanghai Disneyland, and we were waiting in line and we were in a single rider's line. And it's better these days, but back then people just cut left and right, just chaos cutting. Like, it just happened. So we were in the single rider's line. I was with a friend, and of course this group tries to cut us, and I instantly put my arm out on the rail, and I was like, no, you are not cutting us. Like, this is a single rider's line. And their whole argument was like, oh, someone from our party's further up in line, so we're just joining them. And I'm like, this is a single rider's line. You're not riding together anyways. It don't matter. That argument literally does not matter. But we were having this conversation in English, and, the next thing they say to me is like, you are Chinese, speak Chinese. Like, what are you doing speaking English? And I'm like, I am American, And I remember in that moment kind of regretting saying that, because I feel like it does play into that ugly American, whatever idea. But at the same time, in that moment, it's like, I don't think of myself as being like Chinese national, I guess, someone who's from China. So I remember that moment just being a little bit like, oh, did I just say the right thing? Like, I think I did. But, in the heat of the moment, that's my only argument of why I'm not speaking Chinese to this person. So, yeah, it just kind of depends, I think, where I'm traveling to specifically. But I think in Asia, it's very apparent to me that, people know that I'm not from Asia when I'm walking around. They can tell that I'm a tourist, even though I am Asian.
Two things. One, Disney is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And right after that too, there was this whole big push back and forth kind of situation. And screaming was happening. And I was looking at the cast member trying to be like, help us. And they were just staring at me like, what's the problem? What's the issue? And just stood there. And I remember afterwards I was wearing some kind of, I don't know, tank top or something of sorts, but the strap fell down my shoulder. And I remember, I think it was the girlfriend of the guy or whatever, but she reached over and gingerly put the strap back onto my shoulder, because I think she felt bad that the whole situation happened. And I was kind of pushed backwards almost. And so I was like, well, at least she feels bad about it.
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah. That there's pushing.
Yeah, there was definite pushing. I kind of lost my footing, fell backwards. Their whole friend group was behind me, so they all caught me. But it was a little bit of back and forth, yelling in Chinese. I obviously didn't know what they were saying. And
that's wild.
Yeah, no cast members there to help me. They were just kind of staring at us.
That's wild. Okay, hate that for you. The other thing too is that reminds me of a time when someone sort of asked me how I identified, and I was like, oh, Chinese. And then they later went on to be like, oh, that's interesting, because I know people that are full Chinese that identify as American more than Chinese. And I was like, oh, we're having different. I didn't say this. I should have. I was like too sort of shook by like that response where I was like, you asked me a question and you just invalidated my answer. Thank you. But I was like, we're having different conversations. Like you're asking me about nationalism, I think. Because I wasn't trying to be like, obviously it's American, but like my identity is around like how do I present and how do I feel culturally. But I just thought it was so wild because it's like, who's out here being like, no, American, of course, or like Canadian, whatever. Like it was just such a weird way that the question like flipped around on me. But then I was like, are there people out there that are like, no, I very much rep China?
Yeah.
That aren't like native Chinese, you know, like
That's weird.
it was weird. It was a weird moment, but I was just like, oh, okay. The way that people think about identity is wild. Or just for me, it seemed so obvious of like, of course we're talking about like, is it Chinese American or is it white? Like that's not even a question for me. But to be like, oh, you rep China? Like, no, I don't. That's not.
Put me on their Olympic team tomorrow.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
like I'm ready. I'm ready. My gymnastics career.
Yeah.
A couple of things come up for me when we're talking about this is that like I guess I'm second generation, like my parents immigrated here, and then you guys are like multiple generations deep already. So I think that's a difference in terms of like identity and speaking. And the other thing is like I can get by speaking Cantonese, but I think I realized that like I don't speak Cantonese to anybody that is my age or younger. It's always like older people. So it's funny when Frisia you talk about hearing Cantonese. Like I don't know how I feel about that because I don't talk to like people my age in Cantonese.
I only hear it from older people, to be fair. But yes, I do understand that. I just learned about this Cantonese meetup group that just started. Paulina, shout out Men and Maid, she is organizing like a Learn Canto casually meetup group. And I just thought it was such a good idea. And like she had mentioned, sorry, Paulina, I don't mean to like tell your story. But just quickly, she basically was like, she sort of felt shame that she didn't speak the language better and she didn't really know how to learn. And then I think she, sort of like put it out to a few people and they were like, no, I'm interested too. And so started this meetup group. And I think that's really interesting because I think that, as we kind of are here for more generations or whatever, and we're sort of removed from the language, it's easier to forget, like that's not new to anyone. But the relationship to like how do we feel about not knowing it also changes. Because I think that like for my mom and my like her cousins, that generation, like they never learned it because they were third, I guess. Their parents spoke Cantonese, but primarily spoke English. So they never learned anything. And then so my mom put me in Chinese school so that I could learn Cantonese. Also, it was close to our house. But, like there's no attachment on their end. And I think that like it's sort of the pendulum swing of people kind of like growing up, either not needing to know it or not knowing it enough, and then kind of wanting to either like get their kids to know it or feeling like, oh no, I should learn because I'm losing connection to culture. And so I guess it's just, it's really like heartening to see that there are things like, Canto meetup group so that people can learn casually without shame and also feel in community. And I guess I'm curious to see like, what will that be like for that group's next generation? Or like, what will it be like, 20 years from now when we are, yet another generation in, not that immigration is going to stop, but I don't know. It's just interesting.
I mean, it sounds like I need to go to that group meetup.
We should host one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I am down to host one for sure. I mean, yeah, because I feel like when I was working at the Chinese Historical Society of America, like in Chinatown, I remember I was like, okay, I got to at least teach myself how to order something for lunch really quickly. And like the easiest thing I taught myself was like, a gai bao. So I was like, I'll just walk down the street and get myself a gai bao and I'll just eat that for lunch every day. And it was only like $1 at that time.
Mm.
And I was fresh out of college. So I was like trying to save money and everything too. But I mean, I need to learn more. That was like the one thing I told myself.
That's interesting. That just reminded me that like when I was a little bit out of college and I worked near Chinatown, we would walk up to Chinatown all the time and we would get wonton meat. And it was a thing that I could like very confidently say wonton meat. So every day I would just order wonton meat.
Yeah.
That was it. End of it.
Yeah. It's all I need.
Very good.
Yeah. Set for the day. I'm good. Yeah. But yeah, Freesia, what you were saying, like my parents also tried to get me into Chinese school, but at that time I was already too old for it, I think. Like I was already at that age where I'm like, I am not sitting here with a bunch of 5-year-olds learning kindergarten Chinese. I think at that time I might have been 11 or 12 already. And I was like, I'm not sitting here on a Sunday taking nap time and then learning Chinese after I wake up. Like,
did any of your siblings do it?
We all did it. Yeah.
Oh, did it stick with any of them?
Nope. None of us. Yep. We all kicked and complained so badly because, I think at that time we were already too old. And we were kind of like, what are we doing here for like whatever, 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday? Like, this is our free day. What are we doing?
I mean, I think that is also like a certain part of this ABC San Franciscan experience too, right? Of just like, you kind of try to learn and then you stop. And I think to bring this back to food, like when you do cook, Alisa, are you trying to cook Chinese food?
I will say half the time. Yeah. Like we do have
really?
We have like oyster sauce, soy sauce. We have like white pepper, like, all those kind of things like stocked in like the fridge and spice cabinet, whatever. Maybe a little less than half. Maybe I'm being generous with half, but we do have nights where we're just like, oh yeah, do we want to do Asian style or like Italian or whatever, Mexican style, etc. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to posit that this third-ish, give or take generation ABC San Franciscan is also sort of like Chinese cooking averse, not Chinese food averse, but like is more willing to try to cook other things. Which you have slightly disproved. And this is a very small sample set.
Well, I think it's more specifically me where it's like, I'm not the best when it comes to cooking. Like I am very much of like, whatever's quick, just throw it in the pan, 1-2 things, stir it around a little bit. I'm not like a multi-step cooker. I don't like, okay, first this, and then this, and then I get too impatient, I think is what it is. Yeah.
I see.
And then, so when it comes to like trying to do new things, I'm kind of like, as long as it's like super easy, not going to take me a lot of time, I'm down to try it. Like curry, for example. Curry's like, okay, here are the sauce cubes. All I got to do is just throw in some vegetables and let it like boil for like whatever, 20 minutes. And then I got my dinner. So I think it's more of so a me thing where I think for a lot of times like Chinese or Asian food in general is probably like easier for me to cook because all I got to do is just throw the things in the pan, put some sauce on it, like black bean sauce, oyster sauce, whatever kind of, or like sesame oil. I do a lot of like sesame oil with roasted sesames on top. Throw that in.
Okay.
Let it do its thing for whatever, how many minutes, and then I'm ready to go.
Fair. I got you. All right. I love that you mentioned curry and the cubes because that is also like that was like a college staple for me.
Yes, love a good curry cube.
Little S&B golden curry.
Yes, exactly. And I actually don't think I ate it that much in college. I think I've eaten it more as an adult and then more so like as a kid when we were growing up. But yes, still a favorite to this day. Sauce over rice is always a favorite for me.
Sauce over rice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, that was a thing in college where I felt like I was like cooking, like it was real cooking. And now we don't make it that much because I don't think the kids are that into it. But I am looking forward to the day when they are. And I know that it will come. Because it's too good for it not to.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, what blasphemy that a child does not like curry. Like, what child would not love tasty sauce over rice?
Well, so Sydney likes this, like, curry, potatoes, and chicken that we get in the neighborhood. And so I think like she is the easiest convert to that, to like a curry cube situation. And then Penny is just a little bit more fickle about things. She's not so into the flavor. And also she doesn't like potatoes in that way, which I feel like potatoes are the best part of a curry always. So we'll see. We'll get there. And then I think the baby is like sort of into it, actually.
Yeah, actually, last week we literally put everything in an instant pot, like the curry cubes and like some ground pork and vegetables, and 20 minutes or whatever. And the baby was into it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She was.
Over rice.
Yeah. So there is hope. It's coming.
Yeah. High hopes then.
Because I look forward to just being like, hey, go get a bowl of rice, scoop this.
One thing about sauce over rice, I remember Frida, your grandpa was really into like sauce and rice and stuff like that. And
yes,
I remember being like a little bit surprised by that, because like my parents' generation and like just older Chinese people in my mind were like less into like saucy rice things, and it was like the kids who were into like the yummy sauce over rice and like soy sauce on rice or whatever like that. And it always like took me a little bit aback, because I was like, oh, he's older and he's like into this sauce, and it's maybe a common thing, even though I'm younger, but it's like that kind of, he is of a younger generation in terms of being in America, you know.
I say this with the utmost respect for him, but in a lot of ways, he did eat like a kid. Like he liked a saucy rice. He liked juice. He would just like want a little side of cheese. Just the things that were a little bit more childlike. And I did appreciate that about him. And it does make me feel good when I'm like, I'm going to put extra sauce on my rice also. But now what I'm wondering, Sam, now that you've said like older people like less sauce on their rice, is that a thing we're going to age into? Like, are we going to age out of sauce on rice? Because that feels sad.
I doubt it, because your Jeepa was into it.
That's true.
Until, you know, he never got out of it.
That's true. But like, is this a thing where I've started to age out of my sweet tooth and I'm happy when, you know, like Asian mom, like, oh, it's not that sweet. Like, am I going to be like, oh, it's not that saucy?
It's just a phase.
I'm not sure that's a future that I want, where I'm like, no, my rice dry, please.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Does your grandma eat saucy rice, Alisa?
You know, I don't know if she does. I know she likes making, I always forget what it's called, but it's kind of like that salty egg and pork over, like it's baked over rice or something like that.
We have talked about this a little, pork hash.
Okay, yes, pork hash. So she makes that a lot, which I don't consider that saucy, even though it's over rice. But I think she does like that more than like stuff with sauce over it. So I don't know. Is it an older people thing? Do they got like more saliva, so they don't need things as saucy? I don't know.
See, and I would think it's the other way. Try mouth.
You're right, exactly. I mean, day to day, she's not eating a bunch because she's so old. She doesn't have a huge appetite. But like, from what I can recall, I don't think she ever showed necessarily like preference towards things that were saucy. Like she would eat it, obviously, but I don't know if she like went out of her way to be like, yeah, I love this because it's saucy.
Interesting.
I do have this other theory of mostly like if you're going to Chinese banquets, you know, they always give you the carb and rice dishes at the end because it's seen as like the filler. So I'm also wondering if maybe that's like an older generation thing of like, oh, it's carby rice, a lot of rice, so it's therefore not as, I don't know, expensive or whatever because it's a filler dish.
That's possible.
Don't know how actually relevant that theory is, but it's just something I was thinking about as we were talking about like rice saucy dishes versus non-saucy things that maybe don't require rice.
That's true. Like, so they're not just having a bowl of rice with sauce on it, like me as a child.
Many of us as children.
Yeah, many of us as children. What's funny about that is the last few times that we've done like Chinese banquet or banquet style, I've just skipped rice entirely so I could eat more of the other stuff. It's been
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
Not that I dislike rice, but it's been great. I just recommend.
Same mindset for buffets, it's a good way to go.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. It's usually my aunt that's scooping rice and she's like, "Do you want rice?" And I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. In a little bit." And then I never get it and it's
Yep.
perfect.
Yep.
And then when the noodles do come out, I'm like, "Okay, now it's time."
Yeah.
And I haven't filled up on rice. I still can be there to like clean sweep the last bits off whatever plate someone hasn't finished. There's like less to-go boxes. This is, I think, my new strategy from here on out. Although not if I go vegan, in which case this whole thing has to be rethought. And then it's only rice.
Only rice and sauce.
Mhm.
Vegan sauces,
Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Alisa, we could and have and will continue to talk about all these things for a very long time. But I think for today, I think we're probably at our limit, although we're really not. I have so many more things we want to talk about. I'm just spitballing here, but I feel like you need to come back and just do like Foods in Asia tour.
Yes. I'll agree in advance. Yes.
Yeah, which is really not the premise of the show, but I don't really care because I do want you to just talk about some of the things that I have seen in your Instagram. But for today, this has been super fun. You and I talk all the time. We will continue to talk about this some more. But thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. I've been meaning to kind of chat with you all for the longest time, so I'm glad I was able to finally do it.
As are we. Listeners at home, we will get up a recipe of Alisa's dad's tomato beef over rice, or something as close to it as we can approximate, knowing the traditional Asian home cook and the non-measurements. But we will do our best, and you will make it, and you won't even know that it's different. It'll be great. And if you're really feeling up for it, go out and find yourself a tomato beef chow mein to order for lunch or dinner. Sam, maybe we need to do that for the children sometime soon.
Yes.
And follow up with a Golden Gate Bakery Don Tot.
Yeah, something like that. Alisa, if people want to find you and follow your largely Disney content, but lots of other things too, where can they find you online?
They can find me at A Bit Wong on Instagram. I'm also on some other places, but mostly Instagram.
It's very good content, people.
More so just things of like, oh yes, this is fun. Here, let's share it out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate fun content given everything that is going on in the world.
Yeah,
I like your funness. I know. But also like lots of good Disney tips. Lots of good travel things. It's good stuff.
I will say I definitely have a lot of friends that are much better at giving all the tips, but I very much easily kind of reshare their tips knowing that they're helpful for other people.
Yes, fair. Also, this is truly no offense to any of your friends, but I particularly like that you do a little bit of all of it and you're not just straight like, here's all the Disney things or like, here's everything food or here, like,
An aggregator.
Yeah. You're multidimensional.
Multifaceted. There's lots of different things. And it's funny you say that because that is a discussion I've definitely had with my friends before. So we can definitely talk about that some other time too.
Oh, and we will. Great. Yes. Love it. Look, come back for part 2 someday, friends. But thank you everyone so much for listening. If you would like to find us, you can find us at worstqualitycrab.com. You can also find us on Instagram at worstqualitycrab. And if you would like to email us, you can do so at worstqualitycrabpod@gmail.com. We still have not sent out our fan boxes. So if you would like to leave us a review wherever you are listening to this podcast, you can do so and you will be entered to win one of our little fun boxes. I will just say there's a real yummy couple of omsoms in there that I love. Not sponsored by omsom. Hello. There's my favorite Trader Joe's ube mochi waffle mix that I hoard a little bit because it's that good, I think. And so does the baby. And some fun things in a food keychain nature, some stickers. So if you would like to leave us a review, you can be entered to win that. And what else, Sam?
If you would like to buy us a coffee, you could go to buymeacoffee.com/worstqualitycrab and donate some money towards us if you like what you hear.
Yeah, we want to make some stickers from that money. Anyway, thank you again. Thank you all at home, and we will talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.